Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the Maybom Perspective. Happy today to be joined by Jennifer Jones, Executive Director at Apparo Academy. Jennifer, thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So I know a lot of you out there are familiar with Apparo, but those of you who aren't, Jennifer, why don't you tell us a little bit about, first of all, maybe your personal background, and then lead into how you got Apparo started, what Apparo does, and those kind of things.
Sure. I graduated from college with a degree in deaf education and was brought to Augusta straight from college to work in Richmond County schools, teaching preschoolers who were hearing impaired. And they were not really utilizing me because they didn't have the numbers they needed. So they had me doing adaptive music and homebound care and resource, just a wide variety. So as soon as I could, I left and went to St. Joseph Hospital and started running their program there for the deaf, from children all the way through adults. Wow. So I did therapy with deaf people. And in that process, I had a preschool classroom where I saw these children who were deaf. There were either 3 to 5, and I saw them every day for 2 to 3 hours and intensely worked with them on their listening skills and their speech skills and sign language. And they made huge gains. Was at St. Joseph Hospital for 10 years, and then opened a private practice, multidisciplinary, for 19 years. I had it before I closed it. And during that time, towards the end, God laid it on my heart to start a preschool for children with special needs. And I kept going back to my days at St. Joseph's and what I had done there and how much progress those children had made. And I was just heartbroken that there wasn't anything in our area for these children, and even children that had more going on. So I would see these children in my private practice, and the parents would be like, well, I had this great career, but now I'm at home because there's nowhere for my child to go. And I just felt like our community was doing a disservice. And so I started researching what's in my head, and it's got to exist somewhere, right? And so I went to different cities and saw some programs that were out there and pulled a little bit from each of those programs to help formulate my idea a little bit more. And I'd already started the nonprofit back in 2006 just to help pay for more therapy for children, because Medicaid went through an HMO stage where they went from allowing 8 therapy sessions per discipline per child each month to 8 units, which is cutting it less than in half. Wow. And so when I started that nonprofit, I already had it, but it had a different mission. So I went to my board around 2017 and said, this is something I feel like we need to do. Can we change our mission? And they said yes. So then I started talking to some other nonprofit people. You might know someone named Millie Blazinski. She was one of the first people I called because of the idea, and that she had worked on numerous boards. And I kind of told her what I was doing. And she said, well, you need to change your board. You need to create a board that can help you run a school and can help you with something this big. So that's what I did immediately. Started talking to people that I knew had children with special needs and might be interested in something like this. And two key people in the very beginning were Melissa Hopkins. She said, you need to talk to my mom. I'm like, who's your mom? Or my mother-in-law. Who's that? And so she introduced me, and I was able to speak to Liz Hopkins, who thought it was a great idea. The Knox Foundation has been a huge supporter of what we're doing.
From the beginning.
From the very beginning, from the pre-beginning, when it was an idea that wasn't even anything. And then the other person was John Stewart, who you know as well. And John just said, this is definitely something I could get behind because of their daughter, Jane. And he said, we've never felt comfortable sending her to school. So we understand exactly where you're coming from. And this is something I would be willing to get behind. And so that's kind of where it started. Yeah.
That's great. All right. So we've talked a little about, how you guys started it. So tell us as briefly as you can, what is it? I know it's part school, it's part therapy. Tell us a little bit about the ratios that you like to have between special needs and neurotypical kids. Give the people listening out there that maybe have not heard of it or have never been over there a little bit of sense of what it is.
Well, a lot of people think it's just the school, but we actually have the 2 components. We have a clinic that is just an outpatient clinic for speech, occupational, and physical therapy. In that program, it's just outpatient therapy,
Okay.
serving children who go to different schools, all ages. We start with
So they don't have to go to the school to,
Correct. We start with infants, go all the way up through about 18 years old.
Okay.
We serve right now about 275 children in that side each month.
And is that across the whole spectrum of therapies?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
And then the other side is what is so amazingly unique is we have an inclusive 60% of our children have some form of therapy or medical need.
Okay.
And 40% of our children are what we would consider normal or typically developing. They don't have any identified therapy or medical needs.
Okay. Okay.
So that's our ratios. And then in each classroom, we have 10 students.
Okay.
A couple of classrooms have 11 just because I have a really hard time turning that child away. But we won't cap, we cap it at 11. We will not take more than 11 with 3 teachers in the classroom.
Yeah.
And then the model is what we call a therapeutic education. So unlike the public school who goes to the classroom, gets the child, takes them somewhere else, does therapy with them 30 minutes and drops them back off in the classroom, our therapists push into the classroom. So if the teachers are working on an art activity with cutting, the occupational therapist is going to be in there using adaptive scissors or showing the teacher how this child will best write their name or what the best activity is for that child. So it's a very integrated, so it's inclusive in the types of children, but then it's an integrated in that our teachers and our therapists are working together. And the other component is our nursing staff.
Yeah.
So it's not just integrated with teachers and therapists. We have an amazing collaboration with the Children's Hospital. And it was one of the first collaborations that we achieved. And they provide us with a full-time registered nurse who works on our property, but they pay her salary.
Amazing.
Yeah. And then we also have 2 nursing assistants as well.
Okay.
And so they are also integrated through the day. So instead of that child being pulled out at lunchtime and go into the nurse's office to have a tube feeding, the nursing assistants bring the tube feeding right into the classroom. They get their tube feedings right there next to their peers who are eating their snack. And it's not a strange thing.
Yeah.
And the children are just used to, this is what the child does. And so, when I talk about inclusive and integrated, I tell people who walk through the walls, you've got to notice that there's no child sitting in a wheelchair off in the corner of the room. They're not just included in the classroom. They're included in every activity. We have adaptive chairs that are at the same level, at the same table as the other children, where all activities are inclusive to where they are literally doing everything together. And a typically developing child is benefiting so much from our program, just as much as that child who has the therapy needs.
That's great. All right. Tell me a little bit about the importance of that sort of integrated model. Like, what does that do for the child with special needs? And what does that do for your typically developing child?
Well, none of us want our child to be like the best child with Down syndrome. We want them to be the best they can be, period. And we don't want to say, well, I'm only going to compare you with other children with your diagnosis. We want them to reach for the moon and the stars. We want them to do the best they can. So if they don't ever see children who can walk, if they don't ever hear children who can talk, if they're not around those children who are doing those skills, they don't know exists. So they need to see, hey, that child was able to get the toy I wanted because they got up and went over there and picked it up.
Got it.
Can I do that?
Right.
And hey, that kid got their food faster because they were crying and they were talking to the teacher. I need to do that. So they need those typical peer models to show them what they can do.
Got it. Okay.
And the typical peers, it's just so much fun to watch. Those kids come into the school shy, not talking much, kind of withdrawn, and within weeks, they are the leader of the classroom.
Wow.
So those children are gaining, that empathy for their friend because they're all their friends. They don't know any difference. Children don't see the wheelchair. Children don't see, Down syndrome. They don't think about the fact that this kid talks with a device instead of with their mouth. They might initially, but then it just becomes a part of that child. And so that's just their friend. And they're praying for their friends. They become leaders in the classrooms. They develop that empathy. They learn that we're all different. And in this society right now, where so many people live in a bubble, only with the people that are just like them, it's just beautiful to see our children love on each other.
Oh, that's amazing. So how long has Apparo been open?
We opened therapy clinic side in
Right.
July of 2019, and our first class of students came in August of 2019.
Okay. So you're 6 or 7 years in, right?
Yes.
We've known each other a long time and been on Apparo a long time. I don't think I've ever asked you this question, but I wanted to. So if you were to take, I know since you've been around, the school has been around a few years, you've had some graduations, right? And you've had, kids obviously move on to different places. If you could get a typical class together when they're graduating from high school, what would you want that to look like? What are some of the things that you'd want to see? What are some of the, I guess what I'm trying to get at is this inclusive model is so remarkable. You talk about what you're seeing now. What would you want that to be 10 years from now?
And are you talking about like in public schools or
just if you were to get
anywhere?
if you were to get them all together back at Apparo?
Oh, okay.
To come back.
Yeah.
For like an alumni day.
Yeah.
Right? Your neurotypical kids, your special needs kids. What are some of the attributes that you'd want them to have? What are some of the things that you want or expect to see that far in the future?
I would want to see the same thing that we do when we see friends. I want them to remember those friends. I want them to say, hey, you remember when? I want them to be able to rejoice in those early years of learning together and see how far both of them have come, the typical and the children with special needs. I want them to be able to celebrate those triumphs with each other and be excited to see each other and remember that friendship. Yeah,
that's great. I remember one of the most powerful things that I think I ever heard was early on at Apparo when a parent reached out to you and just said, hey, my son got invited to a birthday party. Never been invited to a birthday party before because they had special needs. And that just sort of rocks my world because I just didn't think about that. And I know that may seem small, but to that child and that family, that's remarkably impactful.
Well, what a lot of people don't realize is when you have a child with special needs, you're in a silo. It changes so much of your life, especially if you're a single mom or a single dad.
Yeah.
And your whole world has to evolve around that child. And, we don't want that child to feel like they're the center of the universe because we don't want to spoil them, right?
Right.
But your world does revolve around that child. Am I seeing the right doctors? Do I have the right therapy? Am I doing the right thing with their wheelchair? Am I getting all of the things that they need? And you don't have the time to be social.
Yeah.
You don't have the ease of getting a babysitter. Even if you have a lot of money,
sure,
you got to find a person that's willing to stay with your child. Add 2 children with special needs, and now you've doubled how hard it is. So finding a babysitter to watch those children, and just the whole world of special needs is an educational experience to somebody who does not have a child with special needs or a family member with special needs, because you really do end up in a silo, and it's not intentional, but like your friends just kind of stop calling and asking you to go places because they know you're not going to be able to. Instead of just coming over to your house and hanging out with you and maybe bringing the pizza so that you don't have to get a babysitter and making it a little bit easier for that. Those are things that I think if you have a friend who has a child with special needs, you need to make the extra effort because they're tired. They are already working through everything. They don't have the capacity to plan the evening. Just make it easier on them, and be a friend, be a true friend. But you do find that a lot of people disappear during that time. And birthday parties are one of those things. And especially if the child is on the spectrum and has some behavioral things and has some diet things going on. And we know he kind of screams and hollers and that'll scare the other kids. So what's beautiful at Apparo is you go to these birthday parties and it is such a mix of children there, and it is beautiful. It's so beautiful.
Yeah, that's amazing. All right, so where things are now, tell us a little bit about, I know you mentioned the number of kids that are served through therapy. How many students do you have right now?
We have 106 in the school, and our capacity is 109.
And you go from which age to which age?
We start at 6 weeks.
Wow. Yeah.
And right now we have a few children that are in the 7, 8. We have one 9-year-old.
Okay.
And that's just because they're in what we call a transitional kindergarten.
Okay, tell us a little bit about that.
So we've had a classroom that's called a transitional kindergarten that we've been using since we opened. And that's really, they're not quite ready to go to public school. They're not quite ready to go to kindergarten, or they just had a surgery. And we're like, if we could keep them one more year and they can continue with their daily therapy, that surgery will actually be beneficial.
Got it.
Whereas we know that with some of these kids, if they get that surgery and then boom, they go to public school and they're in their wheelchair all day, because some of these children in the public school, they get put in their wheelchair when they get on the bus in the morning at 5 or 6 a.m. And they're in it until they come home that night. That's not going to benefit them if they just had a surgery on their legs where they need to be moving and they need that therapy. So it's on a child by child basis of what their need is. If they are ready to move on to another school, we want them to move on. The parents leave kicking and screaming with white knuckles, but we want them to move on. We celebrate that success that our name, Apparo, means to make ready. We want to prepare them to make them ready to graduate from Apparo and move on.
Got it. That's great. All right. So talk a little bit about the growth of the school. I remember meeting you over at that first original building and, having that conversation about, the dreams that you had. And it was so moving and gripping and inspiring, but to see it actually come to life has just been remarkable. Talk a little bit about where things are now. I know you just mentioned the number of students and the services you provide, but I know obviously Apparo's got some pretty big growth plans right in that same little area. Helped you guys buy a piece of land just right next to the school. Talk a little bit about, I'll say two things. First of all, the plan that you guys have, the capital campaign and the plan, but also talk about what you're going to be able to do once you're fulfilling that mission.
Yeah. So, we started with 32 students in 3 classrooms. And this community has just come behind us in such a strong major force we've tripled those numbers, more than tripled those numbers. And people asked me all the time, will you ever go older? Will you ever go older? And I always kept saying, no, this early intervention is the key. We've got to stay with this early intervention. But I think God's taken us in that direction to where it's time. We are purchasing the 5.3 acres across the street, and our plan is to put a freestanding destination therapy clinic. And what do I mean by that? It'll be an 8,000 square foot therapy clinic where we can do intensive therapy for children who want to come in and get, say, 3 hours a day, 5 days a week or something like that. So that's one aspect of that, but it'll also just be an outpatient therapy clinic where we could double our numbers. The goal is to have up to 18 therapists in that outpatient therapy clinic where we could serve up to 500 children a month versus the 275 that we serve now.
Wow.
And then the second part of the expansion would be building an elementary school.
Got it. Okay.
So in that elementary school, we're putting 6 classrooms.
Okay.
And so each of those classrooms would only have 10 students. It will not be an inclusion school.
Okay. What do you mean by that? Yeah.
It will just be children with special needs.
Okay.
It will be the only Christian school in the United States for children with special needs.
Wow.
There does not exist one.
Yeah. So that will start at what grade?
It will start at kindergarten.
Okay.
And so
you still do the Apparo thing.
Yeah.
Terrible description.
Yeah.
All the way up through that transitional kindergarten. But beyond that, it's a specific focus on kids with special needs starting first grade and beyond.
Yeah. There's an amazing program out of Atlanta called Jacob's Ladder.
Okay.
We are actually training our staff. We will be implementing Jacob's Ladder here in Augusta, which we're super excited about. It's an intense program that has been founded on 30 years of research by Amy Odell for her son. And they've created a whole curriculum and protocol that they test 2 days of testing to see brain mapping of how does this child learn? How do they do things? And then our staff is trained. It's heavily staffed. You have a lead teacher, and then you have instructional facilitators who are over a group of, say, 3 children who do one-on-one instruction on a daily basis. And so it's very intense learning how that child learns.
Right.
I have a son who's in 11th grade, and he's on about a 3rd or 4th grade level, and the public schools just keep moving him through the grades.
Right.
And it's like, but now he's expected to act like an 11th grader emotionally and mentally, and he's supposed to be able to do 11th grade work. He can't. So there's a lot of frustration there. So our goal is to, in one classroom, we might have a child who is 5, 7, 10, a wide variety of ages. So their age will determine their grade level.
Right.
But their academics will be on their cognitive level.
Okay.
So in that classroom, they will be paired cognitively with children who are on the same cognitive level, regardless of what their age is. So, and then we will still push in all of our therapy services as well.
Sure.
So it will be the beauty of having both of those things.
That's amazing. So you guys are just now beginning that campaign and starting to talk to people, and that's incredible. So the goal is, once you've got it all done, to be able to have this sort of, next door campus that seems to be a little more focused, obviously, on the therapy, but also on some of these students that you currently have and being able to take them on as they get older.
Yeah. And one of the even more exciting things is we really want to also have the capacity to take children that are high medical needs.
Okay.
And once we build the therapy building, so the goal is in August, we start our first kindergarten class, and it will be in our old building.
Got it.
In an effort to be a good steward of what the funds that God gives us. We'll be using one of our old classrooms and displacing some of our therapists for just 1 year.
Okay.
And then the second year, the goal would be that we have the therapy building built. And so all of our therapists from our old building move into the therapy building,
right,
which opens up that building. Then we have our second classroom in that building.
Okay.
Then we build the school. Then we're able to move those 2 classrooms into the school, and the third classroom comes into the school. Now we have that whole side of the building that's open. That's where I'd like to then add some medically fragile classrooms.
Got it.
Where we can start looking at, what about these children who are on ventilators that don't go to school?
Yeah.
Even if they come for a few hours, so their parents have some true respite. So that children get socialization.
Right.
Because it's not just about taking care of the child and making sure the child is healthy. It's about them getting socialization, them getting a school experience.
Right.
I remember just when Sweet Jane was with us, and she loved coming to school, and she didn't get to come to school for long, but she was there long enough to pick her up and run her around the bases when we were playing baseball. And, just those things. We want every child to be able to experience the inclusion of coming to school.
Right. That's incredible. Well, that's super exciting. Talk to me a little bit about the Christian aspect. I think is fundamental to Apparo, and I know that throughout the school you've got Bible verses written everywhere. Talk a little bit about why that was such an important component for you with creating Apparo.
Well, like I said, these families are in silos.
Yeah.
And when they're in silos, very often they're not going to church.
How could they?
I've had people tell me, well, this week I'm going with my other children while my husband stays home. And then next week my husband's going to go, or both are at home. And, and I have children with special needs, and I spent many Sundays in hospitals after surgeries, and it just weighed heavy on my heart that these families, they still need someone pouring Jesus into them, and the children need it. And if they're not going to go to church, where are they going to learn it?
Yeah.
And so, we don't beat it down their throats. We have a Bible curriculum. We sing Christian songs.
Yeah.
And, and what's interesting is I look at it now and I think, I thought God wanted me to do this education as a Christian school for the parents and the children. And that is important. And that's why we're doing it.
Sure.
But I do see it affect my staff even more.
Really?
A lot of people are hurt and broken. And to be able to come to a workplace, we have 77 employees now.
Goodness gracious.
And to be able to come to a workplace where you can talk about God and Jesus, and it's actually encouraged, and where you can go to your boss and they can pray with you. And that's invaluable.
Yeah.
And I was just listening to some research on my drive over here that said that conservative Christians who go to church on a regular basis have the lowest mental health and anxiety problems than anybody.
Wow.
And it gives you a peace.
Right.
It gives you a joy. Right. And that's the one thing we're told about everyone who walks into Apparo. They say, you can feel the joy in here. There's just a peace inside of these walls. And that's just God.
Yeah. Well, you can feel it. It's wild, and it's unlike anything I've ever experienced. I remember once we had the school built and had those students there, and you and I were meeting a lot, and I was over there, a lot as we were working on everything. I would always tell people, if you're having a bad day, or if you just need something, that recharged, at least for me, my batteries more than anything else. You go and it just, like you said, it's just this feeling. It just fills you up with so much warmth and love and hope. And it's not just the kids, it's also the teachers and the therapists. And it's just this community of people who are literally spending their time trying to care for others. It's pretty remarkable.
People always say when they come in, and that's not what I expected. And I'm like, you just expected to see a bunch of kids in wheelchairs drooling on themselves.
Right.
I mean, it's a preschool.
Yeah.
There's laughter, there's screaming, there's, there's dirty diapers, there's all of that. And it's great fun.
Yeah, that's great. All right. The last thing I wanted to ask you about, because this is one of the most interesting aspects I think that drew me to Apparo in the first place, is talk a little bit about your revenue model. Because to me, that was what was so unique and fascinating is you guys can bill for those therapy services. So, unlike a regular school where you're just really depending on tuition, you're able to make that model work. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Well, when you look back over your life, you realize why God took you through different things to get you through that point. And I think that's part of the reason I had a therapy practice. So I could develop the business skills that I needed, understand the billing, understand the whole aspect of the therapy. And when you own that therapy practice, you get to kind of scrape the cream off the top. You pay the therapist and then you make a little bit from that. And I said, well, there's something, we could do something with that cream, right? So the model of being able to bill for the therapy services allows us to support having those 3 teachers in the classroom.
Got it.
Our tuition is not high. Our tuition is actually average considering what you pay around the Augusta area. And then in addition to that, we subsidize 70% of our students' tuition. And then we also subsidize 15% of our therapy services. Now that's to a large number of children, but it's 15% of the revenue that we expect to bring in for billing for those therapy services. So if you come to Apparo, you're going to get therapy, and we will help you in whatever way we can. And so what we do for our model is we're billing for the therapy services. That ends up covering about 60% of our budget for the year. From that earned revenue. The tuition only brings in about 15%. We have 2 fundraising events a year. We have a golf tournament, which we do in the fall, and then we have a spring garden event, which is coming up. And so we sell tickets for that and have golf teams and sponsors. So if there's anyone listening who wants to sponsor one of those events, we would love that. And then we just have general donors. Our monthly recurring donations are amazing. Those help us to sustain our operations so that we don't have to have a huge tuition amount that puts this outside of the ballpark. And
for all those families.
And we do accept the state subsidies. We are quality rated 3 stars out of 3 stars, and we're also an accredited school. So we qualify for the CAPS, which a lot of families get for early childcare. And now for our elementary school and for our 4-year-olds and up, we also qualify for the quality education tax credit. So we also do scholarships through that. Most people know that as GOAL.
Georgia GOAL.
We use GASO, Georgia SSO, but the same program. And so our families get a lot of support, and we're able to do that because there's so many amazing programs in the state of Georgia to help us.
That's great. Well, Jennifer, thank you. Thank you so much for being here, and also thank you what you do for this community, and love to have you back as the campaign grows and as the school continues to grow. But for those listening out there, obviously Maybom has been a big supporter of Apparo. I mean, and if anyone out there has never been to that school when the kids are there, you're missing out. It is an amazing place. And I think one of the things we said when we started it was, and you said it earlier, is what does it say about where we live if we don't have this? If we're not meeting that need, what does it say about us? So go check it out. They have an amazing website, and Jennifer's an amazing person. She's got a great team around her. So check out Apparo Academy. And Jennifer, thanks for being here.
Thank you.
All right. We are done. We're good.